In this video, I'm going to answer one of the most searched questions in business right now. What exactly is a fractional CMO? The term gets thrown around constantly, and most of the definitions you'll find online are either honestly, hopelessly vague, or just flat out wrong. By the end of this, you will know precisely what a fractional CMO is, what makes them different from the 4 other things people constantly confuse them with, and most importantly, whether your own company is actually at the stage where hiring one makes sense. If you're a founder or a CEO who already knows your marketing needs real senior leadership, but you genuinely just can't justify a $250,000 full-time salary to get it, then this is the conversation that will finally clear it all up. So let's get into it. Here's how we're going to break this down. First, I will give you the plain English definition in a single sentence. No jargon. Then I'm going to show you the 3 roles a fractional CMO is commonly mistaken for: the mentor, the consultant, and the full-time hire. And I'll show you exactly where the fractional executive sits among them, because this is the precise spot where almost everybody gets it wrong. After that, I'll explain the word permanently part-time and what it actually means, what a fractional CMO truly owns once they're inside the company, and why it costs a fraction of a full-time hire. And lastly, the specific type of company that gets the most value out of one. So stick with me to the end and you will be able to tell in about 30 seconds whether you actually need one. So let's start with the definition right up front, because you searched a clear question and you deserve a clear answer. A fractional CMO is a senior marketing executive who works for your company permanently, but on a part-time basis. But more importantly, is embedded directly into your leadership team again. Now let's read that again, because every single word is doing real work there. Senior. This is someone who has actually run marketing at a high level, not a coordinator, not a specialist. Permanently. This is an ongoing relationship. This is not a one and done project. Part-time, typically 1 or 2 days a week, not the full 40 hours. But most importantly, embedded. They sit inside your leadership team. They own the number. They own the results. And they're not an outside vendor mailing you a report once a month. That's the entire definition. A senior marketing leader, permanent part-time, embedded in your team. Now let me show you what it's not, because the contrast is where this genuinely gets clear. The market lumps 3 completely different roles into one bucket with the fractional CMO, and confusing them will cost you real money. Look at the table with me. First, a mentor. A mentor gives you advice and guidance, which is generally valuable, but they have 0 involvement in execution and no accountability whatsoever for your results. Second, a consultant or advisor. They're a clear step up. They'll analyze your marketing. They'll hand you a polished strategy deck, and they'll tell you what to do, and then they're going to leave without actually doing it for you. And third, a full-time CMO. Full embedded leadership that owns both the strategy and the execution, but at 40 hours a week, plus that executive salary and equity. So where does the fractional CMO actually fit in? They take the strategy that you'd get from a consultant, they add the execution and the embedded and their accountable leadership that you would get from a full-time CMO, and they deliver it all on a permanent part-time basis at a fraction of the hours, and most importantly, a fraction of the cost. That exact combination, senior leadership that genuinely owns the outcome without the full-time price tag. That is the whole point of the model. And that is what none of the other 3 give you. What they sell, who owns the execution, who owns the outcome. A mentor will give you advice and guidance. A consultant and an advisor will give you a strategy and a deck. A full-time CMO gives you embedded leadership. They give you a full 40 hours, but a full salary. But a fractional CMO gives you embedded leadership. They're permanent part-time for a fraction of the cost. Now, the word that trips people up the most is fractional itself. So let me separate that cleanly from a term it consistently gets confused with: interim. An interim CMO is a full-time but temporary. They parachute in at 40 hours a week to cover a gap for a few months, and then they're gone. A fractional CMO is the exact opposite shape. Permanent, but part-time. The relationship is designed to last, medium to long term, and often it can last for years. And it's directly tied to your company's ongoing growth. The reason why the model works comes down to simple math. A company in the $5 to $50 million range almost never needs 40 hours a week of high-level marketing strategy. What they actually need is about 10 hours of genuinely brilliant strategy, delivered consistently month after month after month. Fractional gives you exactly that. The senior brain on a permanent retainer without forcing you to pay for 30 hours a week of strategic thinking you don't actually need. And this is exactly where companies waste money. They hire a full-time CMO too early, and that expensive executive runs out of high-level work to do, and they end up doing $50 an hour tactical tasks just to fill the week. The fractional model quietly eliminates that waste. So if they're only with you part-time, what do they actually own? That is the single line that separates a fractional CMO from everyone else at that table. They take full accountability for outcomes, not for activities. A fractional CMO owns 4 things. They own the strategy, the positioning, the messaging, the entire go-to-market plan. They own the team. They manage and mentor your existing marketers and your outside agencies, and they make those hard personnel calls when they're needed. They own the budget. They decide where the marketing dollars actually go, and they are answerable for every return on every line item. And they own the number, the pipeline, the leads, the revenue target that marketing is on the hook for. When something in marketing goes wrong, they are the one that the CEO turns to. And that right there is the difference between a leader and a vendor. A vendor delivers a deliverable and walks away, but a leader owns the result. Now let's talk about, quite honestly, the single biggest reasons companies go fractional in the first place. The cost. And here's the key. A full-time CMO doesn't really cost you their salary. It costs you their loaded costs. Once you add base salary, bonus, equity, benefits, payroll taxes, and the recruiter fee just to find them, a full-time CMO, that $250,000 range realistically runs you well over $300,000 a year. A fractional CMO, by contrast, typically works on a monthly retainer of somewhere between $5,000 and $10,000. Run that math with me. Even at the top of that range, you're looking at roughly $120,000 a year. And at the lower end, far less than that. You're getting that same caliber of strategic senior leadership for somewhere between 1/3 and 1/5 of the full-time cost. And just as important, it's a flexible operating expense that you can scale up or down as you need. It's not a fixed 6-figure commitment that you're locked into the moment growth gets bumpy. For a $5 to $50 million company, that cost structure, it's not just a nice to have, it's the entire reason this model exists in the first place. If you have a full-time CMO, you're paying $250,000 in salary or more. With a fractional, it's $5,000 to $10,000, maybe even $15,000 a month retainer. But there's no bonus, no equity, no benefits, none of that. None of that is needed. Which brings us to the most practical question of all. What kind of company actually needs one? The sweet spot is a business between roughly $5 and $50 million in annual revenue. Below that, you usually can't justify a senior marketing strategy. Above that, you can often afford that full-time CMO outright. But inside that middle band, you almost always see the exact same pattern repeat itself. The company is clearly doing marketing. There's a website, there are some campaigns running, maybe a junior marketer or a couple of agencies in the mix. But there is no senior strategy connecting any of it together. The founder has quietly become the de facto head of marketing, approving ad copy in between investor calls. That growth that used to flow naturally from word of mouth and founder-led sales has clearly stalled out. So if that sounds like your company, lots of marketing activity, but no strategic leadership steering it, then you are precisely who the fractional model was built for. So let me make this concrete with a quick picture. Imagine a $15 million B2B software company. The founder built the whole thing on relationships and referrals, but now growth has flattened. You've hired 2 genuinely capable young marketers, but those 2 are running in circles because nobody senior is setting the direction for them. So the founder considers hiring a full-time CMO, gets the quotes back, $250,000 plus equity, and they understandably balk at that. Instead, they bring in a fractional CMO for 1 day a week, and within 90 days, that fractional leader has set the marketing strategy, refocus those 2 junior marketers onto the work that actually matters, cut loose the agency that wasn't performing, and put a real trackable pipeline number in place. The company got the senior marketing leadership and clear direction without adding a $250,000 line to the payroll. This is exactly why the model is working, and it's working the way it was exactly designed to. And notice what changed. It wasn't that the company suddenly spent more on marketing. The budget barely moved. What changed was that for the first time, somebody senior was actually deciding where that budget went. Now here's the reframe that really matters if you're now weighing this all up for your own company. The natural instinct is to compare a fractional CMO's monthly fee to a salary and conclude that it looks really expensive for someone who's only there part-time. But that's the wrong comparison entirely. You are not buying hours. You are buying judgment. You are buying experience. A fractional CMO's value has almost nothing to do with the time they spend and almost everything to do with the speed at which they can diagnose what's actually broken and point your existing budget and team at the right thing. 10 focused hours from someone who has solved your exact problem 10 times before will outperform 40 unfocused hours every single time. So the real question isn't simply, can I afford one? The real question is, what is it already costing me to keep my marketing running with no senior strategy at all? And most of the time, that hidden cost is far, far larger than the retainer. Think about it. Every month without a strategy is a month of budget spent on the wrong channels, a month your 2 marketers are building the wrong things, and a month of growth you just never captured. Add those up over a year, and the fee for a fractional CMO starts to look less like an expense and like the most cheapest insurance you'll buy all year. So now that you know exactly what a fractional CMO is, the very next question almost everyone asks is the practical one. Okay, is it actually time for my company to hire one? Because knowing what the role is and knowing if you're genuinely ready for it are 2 completely different things. I broke down the exact signals that tell you you're ready, and just as importantly, the signals that tell you you're not ready yet in the next video called, Should I Hire a Fractional CMO? Go watch that one next, and you'll know for certain whether this is the right business move for you right now.